Welcome to math class. We are continuing on in the Math Makes Sense 9 textbook, and we are moving on to 2.3, Order of Operations. It actually starts on page 63 of the textbook if you're following along. So now we are starting to apply some of the skills we learned in the last unit to some of the slightly more complicated stuff that we're covering into this unit. So if you want to open up to page 64, we're going to go through a couple examples there. The first thing we have to remember with all of this is we have to remember our order of operations. Okay, brackets, exponents, division and multiplication, all at the same time, addition and subtraction. So when we're looking at examples, for example, if we look at the very first one, I need to make this page way longer. If we look at the very first example of 3 cubed plus 2 cubed. Sorry, this is actually 3 squared plus 2 cubed. Squared plus 2 cubed. Now this can look a little bit confusing. It looks like you don't know what to do, but the trick is to treat each one of these like they're their own little miniature math equation inside a bigger equation. So I'm actually going to solve them one at a time, right? I don't have any brackets. I kind of just put my own in, but the original question, there was no brackets, but there was exponents. We have to solve those before we do our addition and subtraction. So, as always, we're rewriting the whole question with one step done at a time. So I go 3 times 3 for 3 squared, so I get 9 plus 2 cubed. And then I'm going to also solve 2 cubed, so I get 9 plus 8. I add those together, and I get 17. Okay, so those are how we solve those. We just break it down into individual steps, step by step, and break it down and solve each of the brackets or exponents or division or multiplication or addition or subtraction. We do them all on our own. Or sorry, each of those gets done on their own. So let's look at a very quick example. I'm going to walk you through everything but the answer on the same examples there, but we're going to look at question 1C from that page. 1C is 3 plus 2 in brackets cubed. Now these ones can be a little bit confusing because you can look at it and originally go, okay, well, there's addition and subtraction right here, so that should probably go last. Maybe we should deal with the exponents here before I deal with the brackets. Don't overthink it. Follow the rules that we set out before. We have to solve whatever operation is in the brackets first. So we look at this as almost two separate equations. We have our bracket and then we have our exponent. So the first thing I have to do is solve my brackets. So this winds up becoming 5 inside the bracket cubed. Okay. 5 times 5 is 25 times 5 equals 125. So if I remember 5 cubes, the same as 5 times 5 times 5. Even with these, I have to break them down and do the first set of each equation as they appear. So I get 5 times 5 is 25 times 5, and that equals my final answer way over here, which is 125. Remember, always break these down into simpler steps. You can't do the whole math equation all at once. You can't type the whole thing into your calculator all at once. Get used to doing math questions step by step. Keep going a little bit further down on that page. What we look at is what happens if we have to start multiplying and dividing while we have exponents. Seems scary, it's really not. As long as we follow our BEDMAS rules, we'll be able to do this no problem. So let's look at 2A off of page 64. What they give us is a couple of square brackets. They start off with square brackets. 2 times negative 3 cubed minus 6 squared. So there's a couple things that we have to recognize right off the bat. So number one, we have to match the same types of brackets together. So the square brackets here are encompassing essentially the whole equation except for our exponent in the top little corner there. So even though there's brackets inside my square brackets, this is still considered a bracket of its own. So I have to deal with the brackets inside the brackets before I can move to the brackets outside the brackets. So we're going to go to BEDMAS as our handy dandy little guide. So I know right off the top I've got these big brackets, but within these brackets I still have to make a decision as to what operations am I going to be doing first. So I'm going to follow it up. So I still have to follow my order of operations within my brackets. So I can ignore this squared out here until I'm done with the brackets. But even within this, I still have to follow my order of operations. Now I have a set of brackets within them, so I have to do those first, but they're only holding a -3. There's no operation in there for me to solve. However, I do have exponents, and they happen to be attached to the brackets, this one. So I actually have -3 cubed. So I'm going to rewrite the whole equation only changing one operation on every step. So I'm going to rewrite this whole thing. 2 times. So we're going to solve this. So I've got -3 to the power of 3. So I've actually got -3 times -3 times -3. The first one winds up being 27 times -3 equals -81. Oh, sorry, whoops. I went too many steps there. I started cubing my 3 before I squared it. So I have -3 times -3 times -3, which is the same as 9 times -3, which is the same as -27. So I'm going to go ahead and put that into my equation. So now I have -27 minus 6, whole thing is squared. So between this step and this step, all I've done is one section of the equation. So I'm going to keep going, and I'm going to solve down the next one. So I have to look at my order of operations again. I've dealt with my exponents. I don't have any brackets to deal with. First thing up is division and multiplication. So I do have an actual division question here. So 2 times -27, I'm going to put my square brackets in here, gives me -54 minus 6 square bracket squared. Okay, I had to move my screen around there for a second. Sorry about the jolt. So I'm going to keep moving this down to give myself a little bit of space. So I have -54 minus 6. So I'm starting way over at -54. I'm taking away another 6. So I actually wind up with -60 squared, which is the same as -60 times -60. So I'm going to punch that into my calculator or do it in my head if I'm super smart, and I wind up with 3,600 as my final answer for that question. Once again, as we've been harping on so far this year, you have to break all of these down step by step. If you try and do the whole thing at once, you're going to wind up with a mess. So follow our order of operations and simply do it step by step by step by step by step by step until you're done. So that's enough examples for me. You can try the rest of the examples on page 64 and 65 if you want. But otherwise, we're going to, oops, sorry, put my pen down. We're going to move on to doing our practice questions, which are on page 66, 3 to 6, 10, 12, and 19. That's what we're going to be working on in class tomorrow. See you then.